Welcome to Inside the Deal. I'm Suzanne Stevens. With me today is Mark Sponseller. Mark is a managing director in the transaction advisory group with Alvarez and Marsal. Mark, you're with a restructuring and turnaround firm. How's business?
Well, on the restructuring side, it's pretty much white hot. Obviously, we're very busy. People know us well for being involved at Lehman. There's a lot of other businesses. I myself work on the transaction advisory side. I think it's a little more choppy there. The financing markets being what they are. Certainly, LBO activity is down. We're seeing more and more activity of entities coming out of the bankruptcy process for sale, even divisions and whole companies. And also, we see some smaller deals, obviously because the financing markets are what they are. Doing deals above an enterprise value of $100 million is pretty tough.
In your experience, how prepared are companies, particularly those that are in distress, to make their case to a buyer?
Usually, most companies aren't very prepared. I think there's a lot of people out there who think they know how to run a process, and unfortunately, we see a lot of deals that die, and a big part of it is the lack of preparation. There are basically 5 areas that companies falter on when they prepare for a deal. That really either slows down and stalls the deal process or outright kills it.
And one of those is not knowing your story, essentially not making the value proposition to a buyer.
That's absolutely right. I mean, the worst thing we see is what we call the shotgun approach. It's almost as if they sat around and every opportunity that the business has ever thought of is put out in the book. The problem with that is it's an unfocused story. It's very hard to sort the wheat from the chaff, and it's very hard for my clients to say which of these opportunities really have merit and which don't. And what ultimately happens is you walk away. Particularly in this market, you need to have a focused story because to the extent you're going to put in more equity, there's more risk to it. And also, if you are going to get some financing, that story needs to be pretty crisp.
Divesting an asset takes a lot of work. How regularly and how often do you find that companies dedicate the resources necessary to do that?
Unfortunately, not often enough. I think the people who are really serial acquirers and divestors know that, but unfortunately too many aren't that way. The biggest mistake we see people make is really not providing enough support in the trenches.
How important is it to have an outsider come in and kind of look over the deal?
I think it's very important. Whether that's someone like my group, which is kind of a consultant that can give you a deal perspective, or even bringing in an unaffected board member, a business development person or something like that. I think an outside perspective helps a lot, if only to point out the obvious holes. We all know this well. When you're working on something and you create it, it's very hard to critique it. So having that outside perspective really will save you a lot of embarrassment down the road to have if you wait till buyers to try to find out the inconsistencies and find out those then.
For companies that are distressed, though, I mean, these are all great suggestions, but how difficult is implementation really when you're in a position of distress?
I guess I would look at it this way. I mean, it's certainly not easy, right? However, if you're in a distressed situation, it's all the more important to do these sorts of things. You're already running against the odds of divesting the entity. I mean, frankly, in many cases, some of these entities that are coming up for divestiture, the answer is going to be liquidation, which is not a great scenario. So I think it's all the more important that you focus on the process, the preparation, the story in a distressed situation, because people are already coming in with a view in mind of that this may not work out. And you need to kind of move them to, there's a compelling reason that this could work out.
Mark Sponseller with Alvarez and Marsal, thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
I'm Suzanne Stevens. Thanks for watching Inside the Deal.